Jasmine Wilson's trembling fingers uncorked her own premium champagne bottle aboard first class. The flight attendant who'd refused her service now stared in shock at the label bearing Jasmine's name, founder and CEO of America's fastest-growing Black-owned luxury beverage empire. Before we dive into this incredible story of resilience and triumph, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever witnessed discrimination, and subscribe to see more stories of remarkable individuals who turn adversity into success. Now, let's uncork this powerful tale of how one woman transformed a humiliating moment into a movement. Jasmine Wilson never planned to become a revolutionary figure in the luxury beverage industry. Growing up in a modest two-bedroom apartment in Harlem, her childhood dreams had been simple: financial security and the chance to build something meaningful. Her grandmother Eloise raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was just 8 years old. Their small home was filled with love, but perpetually short on money. "You can build something from nothing if you have vision and determination," Eloise would tell young Jasmine while teaching her to cook family recipes. "Your hands were made to create, not just to serve." Those words echoed in Jasmine's mind years later as she worked her way through Spelman College, graduating summa cum laude with a business degree. Despite her academic achievements, the path forward wasn't easy. She took 3 jobs simultaneously: administrative assistant by day, rideshare driver evenings, and weekend shifts at a wine shop where she discovered her passion for fine beverages. The wine shop job began as a necessity, but evolved into fascination. Jasmine noticed something troubling about the luxury wine and champagne industry: the complete absence of Black-owned brands on their premium shelves. When she asked her manager about it, he laughed. "Black folks drink what we sell them. They don't make this stuff," he said dismissively, unaware that his words were planting the seed of what would become Royal Heritage Champagne. Jasmine devoted every spare moment to learning about viticulture, fermentation processes, and the business of luxury beverages. She took weekend certification courses, attended tastings, and saved every penny toward her vision: creating America's first Black-owned ultra-premium champagne brand that would compete with established European labels. Her grandmother's small kitchen table became her first office, covered with business plans, market research, and budget projections. For 10 years, Jasmine lived with single-minded focus. While friends bought homes and started families, she poured everything into her dream. Her dating life consisted of brief relationships that inevitably ended when partners couldn't understand her dedication. "You're obsessed," her last boyfriend had said before walking out. "There's no room for anything else in your life." Maybe he was right, but Jasmine couldn't slow down. The vision was too clear, too necessary. The luxury beverage industry needed disruption, needed voices and perspectives like hers. Finding investors proved nearly impossible. Jasmine approached 47 different venture capital firms, banks, and angel investors. Each rejection followed a similar pattern: initial interest followed by sudden concerns about market fit or questions about whether African Americans would purchase premium champagne. During her 48th pitch to a Black female investor named Tanya Michaels, Jasmine finally heard the words she'd been waiting for. "I see what you're building," Tanya said, studying Jasmine's meticulously prepared business plan. "And more importantly, I see why it matters." With Tanya's initial investment of $500,000, Royal Heritage was born. Jasmine secured a partnership with a small vineyard in California's Sonoma Valley, working directly with the vintners to create a distinctive product. She insisted on quality that would surpass expectations, knowing her brand would face extra scrutiny because of who founded it. The challenges continued. Distributors questioned whether a Black woman could understand true luxury. Retailers expressed doubts about shelf placement. Industry publications initially ignored her product launches. "This industry wasn't built for people like me," Jasmine confided to her grandmother after a particularly difficult meeting. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm just banging my head against a wall." Eloise took her granddaughter's hands. "Walls come down, baby, especially when you've got a good battering ram." Royal Heritage's first production run sold out in 2 weeks, primarily through direct-to-consumer channels and partnerships with Black-owned restaurants and retailers. The second run sold even faster. By year 3, industry publications couldn't ignore the brand's growth, and Royal Heritage won its first international award for quality, beating centuries-old European vineyards. Now, 5 years after launching, Jasmine was on her way to the meeting that could catapult Royal Heritage to global recognition. Luxury Universal Distributors, the world's largest distributor of premium alcoholic beverages, had expressed interest in adding Royal Heritage to their portfolio, which would place her bottles in fine establishments worldwide. The Paris meeting represented everything Jasmine had worked toward. She'd prepared exhaustively, reviewing market projections, growth strategies, and international expansion plans. Royal Heritage was ready for this step, and so was she. Jasmine's ritual before important business trips was always the same. She flew first class. It wasn't about luxury or comfort, though those were nice. It was her reminder of how far she'd come from that Harlem apartment, a tangible marker of her success. When she settled into that wide seat, it was her moment to acknowledge her journey, before focusing on the road ahead. As she packed for Paris, Jasmine included several sample bottles of Royal Heritage's newest vintage in her carry-on. She always traveled with her product, both for impromptu tastings and as a tangible reminder of her purpose. This particular batch represented their most ambitious offering yet, a champagne specifically crafted to compete with the most exclusive French labels. "Bring me back something pretty from Paris," her grandmother said during their pre-trip call. "How about a global distribution contract?" Jasmine replied, laughing. "That'll do just fine," Eloise chuckled. "Just remember who you are when you're sitting at those fancy tables." Jasmine promised she would. But she couldn't have anticipated just how severely that identity would be tested before she even arrived in Paris, or how a moment of humiliation would transform into an opportunity to change an entire industry. The morning of her flight, Jasmine arrived at JFK International Airport 3 hours early. International travel post-pandemic required extra time, and she never left anything to chance, especially not for this trip. Her carefully selected outfit, a tailored Pyre moss suit in deep burgundy with subtle gold accessories, projected exactly the image she wanted: successful, confident, and unmistakably herself. At the check-in counter, the first subtle microaggression occurred. "First class to Paris?" the agent repeated, glancing between Jasmine and her passport with poorly disguised surprise. "Let me just verify that reservation again." Jasmine maintained her professional smile while the agent triple-checked what was clearly displayed on the screen. She was used to this, the assumption that she didn't belong in premium spaces, the extra verification her white counterparts rarely faced. "Everything seems to be in order," the agent finally conceded, unable to find a reason to deny Jasmine her rightful seat. The premium security line and lounge experiences passed without incident. Jasmine used the time to review her presentation one last time and send a few final emails to her team back in New York. Everything was in place for a successful Paris meeting. When boarding began, Jasmine was among the first group called. As she approached the gate, the attendant checking boarding passes subjected her to yet another prolonged inspection. "You're in 2A? First class?" The question was becoming tiresome. "Yes, 2A," Jasmine confirmed with practiced patience. Aboard the plane, flight attendant Veronica Caldwell's expression shifted visibly when Jasmine approached her first-class seat, a momentary widening of the eyes, a slight stiffening of her professional smile. It was subtle but unmistakable, to someone who had experienced it countless times before. "Can I help you find your seat?" Veronica asked, despite Jasmine already standing directly beside 2A with her boarding pass clearly displaying the same seat number. "I'm at the correct seat, thank you," Jasmine replied pleasantly, storing her designer carry-on in the overhead compartment. As Jasmine settled in, she observed Veronica warmly welcoming other first-class passengers, all white, offering to hang their jackets and bringing pre-departure beverages without being asked. The contrast in treatment was glaring but familiar. 15 minutes passed. The 8 other first-class passengers had all received attentive service, including champagne, water, or juice of their choice. Jasmine remained unattended, her call button deliberately unused. She preferred to give people the opportunity to correct their oversight before drawing attention to it. When Veronica passed by again, Jasmine gently raised her hand. "Excuse me. I'd love some champagne when you have a moment." "We'll get to you when we can," Veronica replied curtly, continuing down the aisle without stopping. Jasmine took a deep breath and returned to reviewing her notes. Another 10 minutes passed. 2 more white passengers who had boarded after Jasmine were promptly served drinks upon taking their seats. When Veronica passed again, Jasmine tried once more, her voice still calm and professional. "I'm sorry, but I've been waiting quite a while for a drink. Everyone else seems to have been served." This time, Veronica's expression hardened slightly. "We're very busy with boarding. If you could be patient, we'll get to everyone eventually." The businessman across the aisle, who had been served immediately, glanced over with a frown, clearly noticing the discrepancy in treatment. Final boarding announcements were made. All first-class passengers were settled with their pre-flight beverages, except Jasmine. As the cabin crew prepared for departure, Jasmine pressed her call button. Veronica returned with visible irritation. "Yes? I still haven't received any beverage service," Jasmine said quietly, maintaining her composure. "The flight is about to depart, and I notice everyone else has been served." Veronica's response was immediate and implausible. "I'm sorry, but we've run out of champagne for now." At that exact moment, another flight attendant passed by carrying a tray with 2 flutes of champagne, delivering them to a white couple in the last row of first class who had boarded after Jasmine. The businessman across the aisle now looked openly uncomfortable, witnessing the obvious lie. A few other passengers glanced over, the tension becoming palpable. Jasmine felt a familiar heat rising in her chest, the unique mixture of humiliation, anger, and resigned recognition that came with these moments. Throughout her career, she'd faced countless situations where her presence in luxury or executive spaces was met with resistance, where she was treated as if she didn't belong despite her accomplishments. "I'd like to speak with the flight supervisor, please," Jasmine requested, her voice steady despite the emotion building inside her. Veronica's expression flickered between annoyance and concern, the latter likely due to the increasing number of witnesses to her behavior. "That's not necessary. I can bring you something else." "I'd prefer to speak with your supervisor," Jasmine repeated firmly. Minutes later, Flight Supervisor Brandon Matthews arrived. His expression was professionally neutral as Jasmine calmly explained the situation. "I've been sitting here for over 30 minutes while every other passenger received prompt service. When I requested champagne, the same beverage freely, offered to others, I was first ignored, then told you'd run out while I watched it being served to passengers who boarded after me." Brandon's response was a masterclass in corporate non-apology. "I'm very sorry about your experience. I assure you we provide the same quality service to all our premium customers. I'll certainly look into this misunderstanding." The word misunderstanding hung in the air. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Everyone who had witnessed the interaction knew exactly what had happened. "Thank you," Jasmine replied, recognizing the futility of pursuing the matter further with someone determined not to acknowledge the obvious discrimination. "While you're looking into it, I believe I'll serve myself." With quiet dignity, Jasmine reached for her carry-on bag in the overhead compartment. From a specialized travel case, she removed a small bottle of champagne. Not just any champagne, but her own Royal Heritage Grand Reserve. The label, with its distinctive gold crown logo and Jasmine's signature as founder and master vintner, was clearly visible. The cabin grew silent as Jasmine expertly removed the foil and eased the cork out with a subtle pop. The sound drew every eye in first class. She poured the golden liquid into her empty water glass, the bubbles dancing in the cabin light. Veronica stood frozen in the aisle, her face cycling through confusion, shock, and then recognition as she read the label and connected it to the woman she had been refusing to serve. Jasmine raised her glass in a small toast to no one in particular and took a sip of her own exquisite creation. The champagne, notes of brioche, green apple, and a hint of honeysuckle with an exceptionally fine mousse, was even better than she remembered. Perfect for celebrating small victories and weathering Life's indignities. The businessman across the aisle caught her eye and nodded slightly, a gesture of respect that acknowledged both the discrimination she'd faced and the elegance with which she'd responded. Brandon, the supervisor, stood awkwardly nearby, clearly unsure how to proceed. Veronica had disappeared toward the galley, presumably to avoid the situation she'd created. What Jasmine didn't notice was the young woman 2 rows behind her, a social media influencer with millions of followers, discreetly recording the entire incident on her phone. As the plane prepared for takeoff, the video was already uploading to multiple platforms, about to reach an audience far beyond the confines of this aircraft. Jasmine sipped her champagne, unaware that this moment of personal dignity in the face of discrimination was about to transform her company and shake an entire industry to its core. What happens when a moment of everyday discrimination collides with the unstoppable force of social media? How quickly can a personal slight transform into a global conversation? And what power does a single act of dignity hold in challenging systemic injustice? The answers were about to unfold at 30,000 feet. Maya Rodriguez, the 28-year-old lifestyle influencer seated 2 rows behind Jasmine, had captured the entire interaction on her phone. With 6 million followers across platforms, Maya had built her brand on authenticity and social awareness, alongside luxury lifestyle content. What she had just witnessed was a perfect storm for her audience, the intersection of blatant discrimination and empowered response, all within the rarefied environment of international first class. Witnessing racism in real time, Maya typed as she uploaded the 3-minute video showing Veronica serving white passengers while repeatedly ignoring Jasmine, followed by the supervisor's dismissive response and Jasmine's powerful solution. Watch how this black woman CEO responds when the flight crew refuses to serve her champagne while serving everyone else. As the plane reached cruising altitude and Wi-Fi became available, Maya's post began its journey across the digital landscape. Her followers responded immediately, sharing and commenting with outrage and admiration. Within 20 minutes, the video had 10,000 views. By the first hour of the flight, it had reached 100,000. The comment section exploded. "This is what we deal with every day. Who is this queen with her own champagne? That flight attendant needs to be fired. Wait, is that Royal Heritage? I've been seeing that brand everywhere." The video jumped platforms, picked up by aggregator accounts with millions more followers. Someone identified Jasmine by tagging Royal Heritage's official accounts, and suddenly the story had a name, a face, and a brand attached to it. Hashtags multiplied. Sure, champagne justice, just flying while black, just Royal Heritage. 2 hours into the 7-hour flight, the view count hit 1 million. By hour 3, mainstream media websites were embedding the video in quickly written articles. Black CEO's perfect response to airline discrimination goes viral. What made the video so compelling wasn't just the discrimination, sadly, all too common, but Jasmine's response. There was no shouting, no scene-making, just quiet dignity and the unexpected power move of producing her own premium product when service was denied. It was a metaphor that resonated widely. When the system refuses to serve you, build your own alternative. Did you see how Jasmine maintained her composure throughout that entire ordeal? Drop a 1 in the comments if you think she handled it perfectly, or a 2 if you think she should have made a bigger scene. Don't forget to hit that like button if you believe more people need to see examples of dignity in the face of discrimination, and subscribe for more stories about remarkable individuals overcoming systemic barriers. Now, what do you think happened once other passengers realized who Jasmine really was? Midway through the flight, the atmosphere in the first-class cabin had shifted dramatically. Passengers who had witnessed the incident firsthand were now seeing it explode online through their own social media feeds. The video had been viewed over 3 million times and was trending globally. Jasmine, focused on her upcoming business meeting and unaware of the digital storm surrounding her, noticed the changing glances from fellow passengers, but attributed it to the earlier incident. It wasn't until a passenger approached her seat that she realized something more was happening. "Excuse me," said an older woman in a designer suit. "I just wanted to say I'm a huge admirer of what you've built with Royal Heritage. My husband and I discovered your Reserve Brut last year, and it's now our go-to celebration drink." Jasmine thanked her warmly, assuming the woman had recognized her from industry publications. And, the woman continued, lowering her voice, what happened earlier was absolutely disgraceful. Everyone can see it online now. Online? Jasmine asked, confused. The woman explained how the incident had been recorded and was now spreading across social media platforms. She offered Jasmine her phone to see for herself. Jasmine's stomach tightened as she watched the video, seeing the incident from an external perspective for the first time. The discrimination was even more obvious than it had felt in the moment. She handed the phone back with mixed emotions. Professional concern about unwanted publicity before her critical business meeting, personal vindication that others could see what had happened, and uncertainty about how this would affect her brand. Meanwhile, in the galley, Veronica Caldwell was having a very different realization. A colleague had shown her the viral video during their break, and the color had drained from her face as she recognized herself. The comment sections were brutal, with thousands calling for her termination. Some internet sleuths had already identified her by name from previous airline promotional materials. "What do I do?" she whispered to her colleague, panic rising in her voice. "I don't know if there's anything you can do," her colleague replied honestly. "This is everywhere." Back at the airline's headquarters, the situation room was buzzing with activity despite the late hour. The chief communications officer had been pulled from a dinner party, the CEO was on a conference call, and the social media team was monitoring the rapidly escalating crisis. The video had now been viewed 7 million times across platforms. The hashtag #ChampagneJustice was the #1 trending topic worldwide, and major news networks were reaching out for statements. "We need to get ahead of this," the CCO insisted. "Draft an apology statement immediately. Make sure it acknowledges the seriousness without admitting specific liability." "Should we reach out to Ms. Wilson directly?" asked a junior staff member. "She's currently on our aircraft over the Atlantic," the operations director noted. "But yes, we need a direct communication strategy for when she lands." The crisis team worked frantically, but they were already behind the curve. The narrative had formed without their input, and the court of public opinion had rendered its verdict. As Jasmine's plane approached Paris, her phone began buzzing continuously with notifications, messages of support from friends, business, contacts and strangers, interview requests from major media outlets, and a surge of new followers across all her personal and business social accounts. Royal Heritage's social media accounts were experiencing unprecedented traffic. The company's website crashed briefly under the sudden influx of visitors. Online retailers carrying their products reported a spike in sales as consumers sought to support the brand they just discovered through the viral video. The pilot's voice came over the intercom as they began their descent into Paris. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our approach to Charles de Gaulle Airport. Local time is 7:45 a.m., and it's a clear morning in Paris." What the announcement didn't mention was that reporters were already gathering at the terminal, waiting for Jasmine's arrival. The video had reached Paris before she had. Jasmine used the remaining minutes of the flight to center herself. This unexpected publicity could either distract from her business goals or amplify them. It all depended on how she handled the next few hours. She had come to Paris to secure global distribution for Royal Heritage, to claim space in an industry that had historically excluded people who looked like her. Perhaps this incident, painful as it was, would shine a light on exactly why her presence in this industry mattered so much. As the plane touched down, Jasmine straightened her suit jacket and gathered her belongings, including the now empty bottle of her own champagne. Whatever awaited her beyond the aircraft door, she would face it with the same dignity and determination that had carried her this far. What she couldn't have anticipated was how the next 48 hours would transform not just her business trajectory, but an entire industry's approach to diversity and inclusion. The champagne she had brought aboard as a personal response to discrimination was about to become a powerful symbol in a much larger movement for change. As Jasmine emerged from customs at Charles de Gaulle Airport, the flashbulbs started immediately. A dozen reporters had positioned themselves strategically, waiting for the woman whose mid-air stand against discrimination had captivated the internet. Overnight, microphones thrust forward as questions overlapped. "Ms. Wilson, can you comment on the incident aboard Flight 237? Was this the first time you've experienced discrimination from this airline? Did you know your response has gone viral? Security personnel quickly intervened, creating a path for Jasmine to her waiting car. She offered only a brief statement. "I came to Paris for business, not to become a hashtag. I'll have more to say later, but for now, I'm focused on why I'm here, to expand opportunities for diverse ownership in the luxury beverage industry." In her hotel room, Jasmine finally had a moment to process the magnitude of what had happened. The video had been viewed over 12 million times. Royal Heritage's Instagram following had increased by 300,000 overnight. Her phone contained voice messages from Oprah Winfrey's producer, 3 major morning shows, and multiple civil rights organizations. "This wasn't part of the business plan," she murmured to herself as she prepared for her meeting with luxury Universal distributors. Meanwhile, Atlantic International Airlines was in full crisis mode. Their hastily released statement had only fueled the fire. Atlantic International takes allegations of discrimination very seriously. We are investigating the incident and have placed the flight attendant in question on administrative leave pending review. We pride ourselves on creating an inclusive environment for all passengers and will take appropriate action based on our findings. The statement was immediately criticized for its corporate tone, use of the word allegations when video evidence was clear, and the insufficient response of administrative leave rather than termination. Celebrity tweets poured in supporting Jasmine and condemning the airline. "Been flying first class for 20 years and never had to bring my own drinks. This is what we mean by everyday racism." Oscar-winning actor, Royal Heritage Champagne just got a lifetime customer, ordering a case today. Grammy-winning musician, "This is why we need Black-owned businesses in every industry." Professional athlete. By mid-morning Paris time, Jasmine received a direct email from Atlantic International's CEO, Alexander Montgomery. "Ms. Wilson, I want to personally apologize for your experience aboard our flight. This incident does not reflect our company values. I would appreciate the opportunity to speak with you directly to address your concerns and make this right. We value you as a customer and regret any discomfort you experienced." The email struck Jasmine as tone-deaf, focusing on customer satisfaction rather than the systemic issues at play. She forwarded it to her assistant with instructions to respond that she would consider a conversation after her business meetings concluded. What Montgomery didn't mention, and what Jasmine didn't yet know, was that he sat on the board of Luxury Universal Distributors, the very company she was meeting with that afternoon. As Jasmine prepared for her meeting, a new development unfolded online. A former Atlantic International flight attendant had come forward with screenshots of internal complaints against Veronica Caldwell spanning 3 years, multiple incidents of differential treatment toward passengers of color that had been reported but never addressed. The airline's statement about taking discrimination very seriously was now being openly mocked on social media. A journalist for the Washington Post had filed a Freedom of Information request for Atlantic's discrimination complaints and discovered the airline had one of the highest rates in the industry. By noon, Atlantic International's stock had dropped 7%. At Luxury Universal Distributors' elegant headquarters near the Champs-Élysées, Jasmine arrived precisely on time, professional portfolio in hand. The receptionist's eyes widened in recognition but quickly resumed a neutral expression. "Ms. Wilson for my 2 o'clock with Mr. Laurent," Jasmine stated calmly. After a brief wait, Philippe Laurent, Global Acquisitions Director, emerged. His handshake was noticeably cooler than during their preliminary video meetings. "Ms. Wilson, welcome to Paris. There have been some adjustments to our meeting schedule today. Several key decision-makers are unexpectedly unavailable." Jasmine immediately registered the shift. In previous communications, the entire executive team had confirmed their attendance, emphasizing the importance of this potential partnership. "That's unfortunate," she replied evenly. "But I'm sure we can still have a productive discussion about how Royal Heritage aligns with your portfolio needs." Laurent led her to a small conference room rather than the executive boardroom she'd been shown in virtual tours. The promised team of 5 executives had dwindled to just Laurent and a junior brand manager who looked uncomfortable. The presentation began professionally enough, with Jasmine showcasing Royal Heritage's impressive growth metrics, quality certifications, and unique market position. She was midway through her expansion strategy when Laurent interrupted. "Ms. Wilson, I need to address the elephant in the room. The incident on your flight has created quite a stir." Jasmine maintained her composure. "I don't see how that's relevant to our business discussion. Luxury Universal values its relationships and public perception. Partners who generate controversy can complicate our market position." The implication was unmistakable. Jasmine was being penalized for experiencing discrimination. "Are you suggesting that being discriminated against makes me unsuitable as a business partner?" she asked directly. Laurent backpedaled slightly. "Not at all. But perhaps it would be better to revisit this discussion when the social media attention has died down. Our board feels timing is important for new partnerships." "Your board," Jasmine repeated slowly. "Would that include Alexander Montgomery from Atlantic International Airlines?" Laurent's slight flinch confirmed what she had just pieced together. The connection between the airline and the distributor was more than coincidental. "Mr. Montgomery is one of several distinguished board members," Laurent acknowledged stiffly. Jasmine closed her portfolio. "I think I understand the situation perfectly now." As she prepared to leave, Laurent offered what he clearly thought was helpful advice. "If you were to issue a statement smoothing things over with Atlantic, perhaps suggesting it was all a misunderstanding, I'm sure we could move forward more quickly." The suggestion that she should apologize for experiencing discrimination was the final confirmation of how deeply intertwined these systems of exclusion were. "Thank you for your time," Jasmine said, rising from her seat. "I think we have different values about what constitutes a good partnership." As Jasmine left the building, her phone buzzed with a text from a contact in the industry. "Luxury Universal fast-tracking deal with Whitfield Estates. Meeting happening now. Thought you should know." Marcus Whitfield was a white male vineyard owner whose product line was notably similar to Royal Heritage, but had consistently scored lower in blind tastings. His company had been trying to secure international distribution for years. Outside in the bright Paris afternoon, Jasmine took a moment to process this latest development. The discrimination she'd faced on the plane wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a larger pattern that extended throughout the industry. The very systems she'd been trying to change were closing ranks against her. Her hotel wasn't far, and the walk gave her time to think. By the time she reached the elegant lobby, her phone was ringing again. This time her assistant in New York. "Jasmine, the hotel's received some concerning messages for you. Security thinks it's best if you change locations." The backlash had taken an ugly turn. Among the hundreds of supportive messages were death threats and racist vitriol from internet trolls angered by her stand against discrimination. The hotel's security team had already arranged for a discreet transfer to another property. As Jasmine packed her belongings, her phone rang with an international number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Wilson, this is Claudette Moreau from Le Monde. We're France's leading newspaper, and we're very interested in your story. Not just yesterday's incident, but the larger issue of diversity in luxury markets. Would you consider speaking with us?" Jasmine hesitated only briefly. If the traditional channels of industry access were closing to her because she'd stood up against discrimination, perhaps it was time to change the conversation entirely. "Yes," she decided. "I think that's a conversation worth having." What Jasmine couldn't know was that her decision to speak out would catalyze a movement that would transform not just her business, but an entire industry's approach to race and representation. The champagne she had brought aboard that flight was about to become much more than a luxury product. It was becoming a symbol of resistance against entrenched discrimination. As she prepared for the interview, Atlantic International's stock continued its downward slide, losing 12% by market close. CEO Alexander Montgomery had scheduled an emergency interview with CNBC to address the crisis, unaware that his attempt to minimize the situation would only make things worse. "It was an unfortunate misunderstanding," Montgomery told the Financial News Network. "Our flight attendant was busy with pre-flight duties, and Ms. Wilson misinterpreted the delay in service. We regret any hurt feelings, but Atlantic International has always valued diversity, The interview was a disaster. The phrase, hurt feelings, was immediately seized upon as trivializing discrimination, and Montgomery's dismissive tone sparked fresh outrage. Within hours, 3 civil rights organizations had called for boycotts of the airline, and the hashtag #HurtFeelings was trending alongside Champagne Justice. Back in her new hotel room, Jasmine watched the interview with a mixture of disbelief and grim validation. The mask had slipped, revealing the true attitudes beneath the corporate diversity statements. Montgomery had shown exactly why her presence in this industry and her refusal to accept second-class treatment mattered so much. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Clara DuPont. I'm a junior executive at Luxury Universal. What happened in today's meeting was wrong. Some of us want to talk, discreetly." Jasmine stared at the message, considering its implications. Perhaps the path forward wouldn't come from the top of these organizations but from allies within who were equally tired of the status quo. As night fell over Paris, Jasmine Wilson, who had arrived hoping only to secure international distribution for her champagne brand, found herself at the center of a growing movement for accountability and inclusion in spaces that had long excluded people who looked like her. The journey that had begun with a simple request for champagne on a flight was evolving into something much more significant than she could have imagined. The next morning, Jasmine arrived at Café Lucien in the 11th arrondissement, deliberately distant from the luxury hotels and corporate headquarters where she might be recognized. The message from Clara DuPont had led to this meeting, arranged, with careful attention to privacy. Jasmine chose a table in the back corner, ordered an espresso, and waited. 20 minutes later, 3 people entered the cafe separately, but converged on her table. Clara DuPont, a stylish black woman in her early 30s, Jean Toussaint, an older Martinican man, and Sophie Lefebvre, a young white woman with bright red hair. All 3 worked for Luxury Universal distributors in different capacities. "Thank you for meeting us," Clara began after they ordered. "What happened yesterday with Laurent was unacceptable, but not surprising. Some of us have been fighting this culture from within for years." Jean, who had been with the company for 22 years, leaned forward. "Luxury Universal has never, not once in its entire history, partnered with a black-owned beverage brand. I've been keeping track." "It's not for lack of opportunities," Sophie added. "Several excellent products have been presented. They always find reasons why they're not quite right for the portfolio." Clara pulled out her tablet. "What they didn't show you yesterday was the actual market research. Your product outperformed Whitfield Estates in every blind tasting. The quality isn't the issue." Jasmine absorbed this information, unsurprised, yet still disappointed. "So why risk meeting with me? I assume this could jeopardize your positions." The 3 exchanged glances before Jean answered. "Because things only change when enough people decide they must. Your moment on that plane, your dignity, your refusal to accept less than you deserve. It reminds us why we stay and fight, rather than leave. And," Clara added, "because we have information you should know." Over the next hour, they revealed a troubling picture. The connection between Luxury Universal and Atlantic International went deeper than Montgomery's board seat. The 2 companies had an informal agreement to direct business to each other and to protect each other's interests. When the champagne incident went viral, Montgomery had immediately called Laurent to ensure Jasmine's deal wouldn't proceed. "But the most important thing you should know," Sophie said, sliding a folder across the table, "is that Whitfield's deal isn't finalized yet. They're rushing it through, but there are procedural requirements that give us a small window." "And this helps me how?" Jasmine asked. Clara smiled for the first time. "Because while Laurent was dismissing you, I was looking at your market data. Royal Heritage has higher engagement across all social metrics than any brand in our current portfolio. The video has made you a global name overnight. If you can translate that momentum into sales metrics quickly, the board would have a hard time justifying rejecting your brand, especially with the public watching." Jean nodded. "They can ignore moral arguments about diversity all day long. but they can't ignore profit potential. That's the language they understand. After the meeting, Jasmine walked along the Seine, processing everything she had learned. The discrimination she'd faced wasn't just about one flight attendant's bias or even one airline's culture. It was about interconnected systems designed to maintain exclusion, systems that protected each other when threatened. But she also had new allies and new information. The path forward wasn't about convincing the Alexandre Montgomerys and Philippe Laurents of the world to change their minds. It was about changing the conditions that allowed them to maintain the status quo. Back at her hotel, Jasmine found several messages waiting. 3 competing distributors had reached out, suddenly interested in Royal Heritage. The interview with Le Monde had generated significant interest from other European media. And most surprisingly, a message from Marcus Whitfield himself. Jasmine, this industry needs disruption. The Old Boys Network has been keeping us both out, just in different ways. Would value a conversation. Marcus. Jasmine's instinct was skepticism, but she remembered her grandmother's wisdom about unexpected allies. She responded with a non-committal suggestion to meet the following day. That evening, Atlantic International's PR disaster continued to unfold. An internal memo had leaked, showing that Montgomery had initially pushed for a much harsher statement blaming Jasmine for creating a scene before legal advised against it. The hashtag #ChampagneJustice had now been used over 2 million times. Montgomery finally requested a direct call with Jasmine, which she accepted on the condition that her attorney could join. The conversation went precisely as she expected. Montgomery offered a significant financial settlement, a lifetime of free first-class travel, and public apologies in exchange for Jasmine signing a non-disclosure agreement and issuing a joint statement describing the incident as a misunderstanding. "So you want me to help you cover up discrimination in exchange for money and perks?" Jasmine summarized after his lengthy proposal. "I'm offering a generous solution that benefits everyone," Montgomery replied stiffly. "Except anyone else who might face discrimination on your airline in the future," Jasmine countered. "I'll need time to consider your offer." She had no intention of accepting, but the call confirmed what she already suspected. Montgomery was desperate to make the story disappear rather than address the underlying issues. The meeting with Marcus Whitfield the next day surprised her. Far from the competitor she'd imagined, he was frustrated with the industry's old guard mentality and the constant moving of goalposts for newer brands, regardless of quality. "They let me get close because I look the part," he explained over coffee. "But I'm still not one of them. They'll partner with me because not doing so would be too obvious after rejecting you, but they'll never truly accept either of us." "So, what are you suggesting?" Jasmine asked. "A collaboration instead of competition. My distribution channels with your social media momentum. We could create something that doesn't need their permission or approval." The idea was intriguing. By that evening, they had outlined a potential partnership that would leverage both their strengths while maintaining their distinct brands. Meanwhile, Clara had sent another message. Luxury Universal's board was meeting in emergency session to discuss the PR implications of their connection to Atlantic International and the potential rejection of Royal Heritage. The narrative was shifting from a single incident of in-flight discrimination to a larger story about systemic exclusion in luxury markets. Jasmine's phone rang again, her assistant in New York. "The Royal Heritage website is back up after we increased server capacity," she reported. "We've had over 50,000 new account registrations since the incident, and retailers are reporting they can't keep the product in stock. Our direct sales have increased 700%. "What about the Paris distributors I met with yesterday?" Jasmine asked. "All 3 have sent formal partnership proposals, and there's more. Bergdorf's wants to feature Royal Heritage in their holiday campaign, and the James Beard Foundation is requesting you as a keynote speaker." The momentum was building. What had begun as a humiliating experience was transforming into an unprecedented opportunity, not just for Royal Heritage, but for changing expectations about who belonged in luxury spaces. That night, as Jasmine prepared for bed, she received one more message, this one from her grandmother. "Baby, I just saw you on the news. You stood your ground with grace, just like I taught you. Remember what I always say." Jasmine smiled. finishing the familiar phrase aloud. When they won't make room for you at the table, build your own table and invite others to join you. With that wisdom guiding her, Jasmine began formulating a bold new strategy, one that would bypass the traditional gatekeepers entirely, while creating space for others who had been similarly excluded. The idea that began taking shape wasn't just about selling champagne. It was about transforming how luxury products reached consumers and who got to define what luxury meant in the first place. As she drifted off to sleep, Jasmine felt a clarity of purpose, unlike anything she'd experienced before. She had come to Paris, seeking approval from an industry that had shown itself unwilling to truly include her. Perhaps it was time to stop asking for permission and instead create something revolutionary. The next morning would bring a new approach, one that would shake the foundations of an industry that had remained unchanged for generations. The champagne incident was about to catalyze something much bigger than anyone could have anticipated. Have you ever faced a moment when all your careful plans crumbled, forcing you to rebuild from scratch? When the very industry you've worked so hard to enter reveals its determination to keep you out? What would you do if the gatekeepers you've been trying to impress suddenly showed their true colors? Would you retreat, or would you find the courage to forge an entirely new path? As midnight approached in Paris, Jasmine sat on her hotel balcony overlooking the illuminated Eiffel Tower, her grandmother's words echoing in her mind. The path she had meticulously planned, securing traditional distribution through established channels, had been blocked by the very discrimination she'd been fighting her entire career. It was time for a fundamental rethinking of her approach. Jasmine picked up her phone and called the one person who had always helped her see clearly in moments of crisis. "Grandma, I know it's late in New York." "Child, you know I don't sleep much these days anyway," Eloise replied, her voice warm. "Besides, I've been waiting for your call. I saw everything on the news." For the next hour, Jasmine poured out the whole story. Not just the flight incident that had gone viral, but the subsequent meeting with Luxury Universal, the connections between the airline and the distributor, the settlement offer with its silencing conditions, and the potential new alliance with Marcus Whitfield. "It feels like everything I've worked for is being threatened because I dared to stand up for myself," Jasmine concluded. Eloise was quiet for a moment before responding. "Baby, do you remember when you were 12 and that math teacher said, 'You weren't naturally gifted enough for the advanced class'?" Jasmine smiled at the memory. "And you marched into that school the next day." "That's right. But what I never told you was what I said to the principal. I didn't just demand they put you in that class. I told them, 'My granddaughter doesn't need your validation to know her worth, but you're going to give her the opportunity she deserves anyway.' You never told me that part. Because I wanted you to fight your way through that class on your own terms, not with anger or a need to prove them wrong. And what happened? I got the highest grade," Jasmine remembered. "Exactly. Now you're facing the same situation on a bigger scale. These companies don't get to decide your worth, but you're going to succeed anyway. Not because they finally let you in, but because you're going to build something better." The conversation shifted something fundamental in Jasmine's thinking. She had been trying to win approval from an industry built on exclusion rather than transforming it entirely. "Thank you, Grandma. I think I know what I need to do now." After ending the call, Jasmine sent messages to her core team in New York, requesting an urgent video conference, despite the time difference. By 1 a.m. Paris time, her laptop screen showed the tired but determined faces of her executive team, 5 diverse professionals who had believed in royal heritage from the beginning. "I know it's late, but we need to pivot completely," Jasmine began. "The traditional distribution model isn't going to work for us. Not because we aren't good enough, but because the system is designed to exclude brands like ours." For the next 2 hours, they brainstormed a revolutionary approach. Rather than continuing to seek validation from established distributors, they would create an entirely new pathway to market, leveraging the viral moment to connect directly with consumers and retailers. "First, we need to reach out to every independent Black-owned retailer, restaurant, and venue globally," Jasmine directed. "Offer preferential terms and exclusive partnerships, Her sales director nodded. We already have a database. We can start tomorrow. Second, let's create an alliance with other minority-owned beverage companies. Instead of competing against each other for the few spots these distributors will allow, we'll build our own distribution network. By sunrise in Paris, they had outlined a comprehensive strategy. Rather than a setback, the viral incident would become the catalyst for a revolutionary approach to luxury beverage distribution, one that would prioritize quality, innovation, and inclusion over tradition and exclusion. Are you seeing how Jasmine is turning this moment of discrimination into an opportunity for transformation? Type 1 in the comments if you've ever had to create your own path when traditional doors were closed to you. Hit that like button if you believe in building new tables rather than begging for seats at old ones. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about revolutionary thinkers who refuse to accept the limitations others place on them. Now, what bold strategy do you think Jasmine will implement to shake up the entire industry? With the strategic framework established, Jasmine turned her attention to immediate action. She called Marcus Whitfield to discuss their potential alliance in more detail. I'm thinking bigger than just our two brands, she explained. What if we created a consortium of independent beverage companies that have been sidelined by the traditional system? Marcus was immediately intrigued. A challenger to Luxury Universal? That would be revolutionary. Not just a challenger, Jasmine clarified. An alternative with different values and a more inclusive approach. As they developed the concept, Jasmine received a message from Clara at Luxury Universal with explosive information. Internal emails revealing that the company had a formal but unwritten policy against partnering with Black-owned brands, citing brand fit concerns as the public justification. Most shocking was an email from Laurent dismissing Royal Heritage specifically. Quality is irrelevant. Our core consumers aren't ready for this kind of brand diversity. The evidence was damning, potentially enough for a discrimination lawsuit. But Jasmine was thinking beyond legal remedies. This wasn't just about holding one company accountable. It was about changing the entire system. Meanwhile, the online momentum continued building. Royal Heritage's social media accounts gained another 200,000 followers overnight. Online retailers reported selling out of their entire stock. Celebrity endorsements poured in, with A-list actors and musicians posting pictures with Royal Heritage bottles. By mid-morning, Jasmine had scheduled a press conference for the following day. Rather than just responding to the airline incident, she would announce her new vision, a revolutionary approach to luxury beverage distribution centered on quality, innovation, and inclusive excellence. While her team prepared the announcement, Jasmine reached out to several other minority-owned beverage companies that had similarly struggled with traditional distribution channels. The response was overwhelming. Founders who had faced the same barriers were eager to join forces in creating an alternative pathway to market. That afternoon, Jasmine received another call from Atlantic International. Their offer had increased substantially, now $2 million plus a featured apology campaign, but still required her signature on a non-disclosure agreement. Jasmine declined firmly but professionally. I'm not interested in being paid for my silence, she told the airline's general counsel. I'm interested in systemic change. Ms. Wilson, be reasonable, the attorney urged. This offer is extremely generous. The issue was never about money, Jasmine replied. It was about dignity and equal treatment. Those aren't commodities you can purchase. After ending the call, Jasmine received another message from Clara. Luxury Universal was planning to announce their partnership with Whitfield Estates the next morning, deliberately scheduled to overshadow whatever announcement Jasmine had planned. Rather than being discouraged, Jasmine saw an opportunity. She called Marcus immediately. They're announcing your deal tomorrow to counter my press conference. Marcus paused before responding. Actually, I haven't signed anything yet. They're assuming my agreement. A plan quickly formed between them. Marcus would attend the Luxury Universal announcement but use the platform to reveal their new consortium instead, effectively hijacking the company's own press event. That evening, Jasmine hosted a small gathering in her hotel suite for the growing coalition of allies. Clara and her colleagues from Luxury Universal, Marcus Whitfield, representatives from several Paris-based independent beverage companies, and a select group of journalists committed to covering the story accurately. What we're creating isn't just a business alternative, Jasmine explained to the assembled group. It's a new model that values quality and innovation over tradition and exclusion. For too long, the luxury beverage industry has been defined by a small group of gatekeepers who determine what is valuable and who is allowed to participate. We're changing that fundamental equation. As the evening progressed, the coalition developed a name for their new venture: Heritage Collective, a global alliance of independent beverage companies committed to excellence, innovation, and inclusive luxury. The journalists present recognized the significance of the story unfolding before them. This wasn't just about one woman's experience of discrimination on an airplane. It was about challenging systemic exclusion in an entire industry. The narrative was evolving from incident to movement. Late that night, after the others had left, Jasmine received a text from an unknown number. "This is Alexander Montgomery. We need to talk privately. No lawyers, no PR teams, just a conversation." Jasmine considered ignoring it, but recognized that true change would require engaging with even the most resistant elements of the current system. She replied with a time and a public location for the following day. As she prepared for bed, Jasmine reflected on how dramatically her situation had changed in just a few days. She had arrived in Paris seeking approval and access from the traditional gatekeepers. Now she was creating an entirely new pathway that would challenge the very foundations of the industry. Her phone buzzed one more time. A message from her grandmother. "Remember, baby, sometimes the door you were knocking on wasn't the right door anyway. Sleep well. Tomorrow you make history." With that blessing, Jasmine closed her eyes, ready for the transformative day ahead. One that would reshape not just her business but an entire industry's approach to inclusion, quality, and opportunity. The morning of Jasmine's announcement dawned clear and bright in Paris. The international media had been alerted to a major press conference at Le Bristol Hotel, though few knew exactly what to expect. The incident aboard Atlantic International had evolved into a conversation about systemic discrimination in luxury industries, and anticipation was building about how Jasmine Wilson would leverage this moment. Meanwhile, across town, Luxury Universal Distributors had hastily arranged their own media event to announce their partnership with Whitfield Estates. The timing was deliberately set 1 hour before Jasmine's press conference, a transparent attempt to seize control of the narrative. What they hadn't anticipated was that Marcus Whitfield had other plans. At 10 a.m., Philippe Laurent stood before a gathering of trade journalists in Luxury Universal's elegant boardroom, projecting confidence despite the company's increasingly precarious position. "We're delighted to announce that Luxury Universal is expanding its portfolio with Whitfield Estates, an exceptional American vineyard producing world-class champagne-style sparkling wines," Laurent announced smoothly. "We'd like to welcome the founder, Marcus Whitfield, to say a few words." Marcus approached the podium, his expression unreadable. The executives at Luxury Universal smiled expectantly, certain they had secured a victory against the troublesome Jasmine Wilson and her viral moment. "Thank you for that introduction," Marcus began conventionally enough. "It's true that Luxury Universal extended an offer to distribute Whitfield Estates globally, an offer that, until this moment, I had not formally accepted." Laurent's smile faltered slightly. "Before making my decision," Marcus continued, "I think it's important to address the elephant in this very elegant room. 2 days ago, this same company refused to partner with Royal Heritage, a brand that has consistently outperformed mine in blind tastings, for reasons that had nothing to do with quality and everything to do with who founded it." The room went completely still. Journalists who had expected a routine announcement suddenly found themselves witnessing something unprecedented. "This morning, I'm not here to announce a partnership with Luxury Universal," Marcus stated clearly. "I'm here to announce the formation of Heritage Collective, a global alliance of independent beverage companies committed to excellence, innovation, and inclusive luxury." Cameras flashed as Laurent attempted to approach the podium, but Marcus continued undeterred. "I invite all of you to join us at Le Bristol in 45 minutes. where Jasmine Wilson and I, along with 12 other founding members, will share our full vision for transforming the luxury beverage industry. With that, Marcus stepped away from the podium, leaving chaos in his wake. Journalists rushed out, phones already to their ears as they alerted their editors to the dramatic development. Laurent and his executives huddled in urgent consultation, their carefully orchestrated announcement in tatters. Across town at Le Bristol, Jasmine received a text from Marcus. Mission accomplished. They never saw it coming. By the time Jasmine's press conference began, the hotel's grand ballroom was packed beyond capacity. What had initially been planned as a business announcement had transformed into a cultural moment. Journalists from every major global outlet jostled for position. Live streams were being set up to broadcast the event worldwide. Jasmine took the stage alongside Marcus and representatives from the other founding members of Heritage Collective, a visually striking group of diverse entrepreneurs from across the global beverage industry. "Good morning," Jasmine began, her voice steady and confident. "5 days ago, I boarded a flight to Paris for what I thought would be a routine business trip. What happened instead has revealed something important about the luxury industry, not just about one flight attendant or one airline, but about systems of exclusion that have persisted for far too long." She paused, surveying the room of attentive faces. "Today, we're turning that moment of discrimination into a movement for transformation. Heritage Collective will create new pathways for exceptional products to reach discerning consumers. Pathways based on quality and innovation rather than tradition and exclusion." For the next 30 minutes, Jasmine and her partners outlined their revolutionary approach. Heritage Collective would create an alternative distribution network, connecting independent beverage companies directly with retailers, restaurants, and consumers worldwide. They would leverage digital platforms to bypass traditional gatekeepers, implement blockchain technology for supply chain transparency, and create immersive experiences that redefined luxury engagement. The announcement was met with thunderous applause. Social media exploded with support, the hashtag #SanjHeritageCollective quickly trending alongside the still viral Daosh Champagne Justice. As the formal presentation concluded and the networking portion began, Jasmine noticed a commotion at the entrance to the ballroom. Philippe Laurent and several luxury Universal executives were attempting to enter, but were being politely but firmly turned away by the event security. "Let them in," Jasmine instructed, surprising her team. Laurent approached, visibly uncomfortable but maintaining a veneer of professional courtesy. "Ms. Wilson, this is quite the spectacle you've created." "This isn't a spectacle, Mr. Laurent. It's the future," Jasmine replied calmly. "I came to Paris seeking a partnership with your company because I believed in playing by the established rules. Now I understand those rules were never designed to include people like me, no matter how exceptional our products." "Perhaps we acted hastily," Laurent suggested, lowering his voice. "We might be able to reconsider our position on royal heritage." Jasmine smiled, recognizing the desperation behind the offer. "The time for that conversation has passed, but I wish you well as you navigate this changing landscape." As Laurent retreated, Jasmine was approached by representatives from Galeries Lafayette, France's premier luxury department store. "Ms. Wilson, we'd be honored to feature royal heritage in our holiday champagne showcase. Your story, and more importantly, your product, aligns perfectly with our vision for the future of luxury." Similar conversations unfolded throughout the event, as retailers, restaurants, and hospitality groups approached Heritage Collective members directly, bypassing the distributors who had previously controlled access. By early afternoon, news arrived that Atlantic International's stock had fallen another 15%. CEO Alexander Montgomery had canceled his scheduled meeting with Jasmine, instead announcing an emergency board meeting to address the crisis. That evening, Heritage Collective hosted an impromptu tasting event at a prestigious Paris venue. What had been planned as a small industry gathering swelled into the most coveted invitation in Paris as word spread. Fashion designers, film directors, musicians, and influencers all sought entry, eager to be associated with what was quickly becoming a cultural movement. The event featured blind tastings of products from all Heritage Collective founders, including a direct comparison between Royal Heritage and Whitfield Estates champagnes. When the results were revealed, showing Royal Heritage's clear quality advantage, the room erupted in applause. Live streaming brought the experience to millions worldwide, creating unprecedented exposure for brands that had previously struggled for recognition. Orders flooded in from retailers and consumers alike, overwhelmingly supporting the collective's vision of inclusive excellence. As the evening progressed, Jasmine received word that multiple competing distribution companies were reaching out, offering partnerships with terms far more favorable than Luxury Universal had ever considered. The balance of power was shifting rapidly. Across town, Atlantic International's crisis deepened as leaked internal emails revealed Montgomery's initial reaction to the viral video. Just another entitled passenger making demands. This will blow over. The airline's attempts to settle privately with Jasmine were now being interpreted as cover-up attempts rather than genuine remorse. By midnight, as the successful event wound down, Jasmine found a quiet moment to call her grandmother. "We did it, Grandma. We're building that new table you talked about." "I never doubted you would, baby," Eloise replied proudly. "How does it feel?" Jasmine looked around at the diverse group of entrepreneurs now united in common purpose, at the industry leaders eagerly seeking their partnership, at the media still documenting every moment of this remarkable transformation. "It feels like justice," she answered simply. "But not just for me. For everyone who's ever been told they don't belong in spaces like this." As she ended the call, Jasmine received a message from her attorney. Atlantic International's settlement offer had increased again, now $5 million, but still required her signature on that non-disclosure agreement. Jasmine's response was brief and final. Not interested in being silenced, interested in systemic change. The story that had begun with a simple request for champagne aboard a flight was now catalyzing an industry-wide reckoning. And Jasmine Wilson, who had arrived in Paris seeking validation from traditional gatekeepers, was instead becoming the architect of a new, more inclusive vision of luxury. The following day would bring even more dramatic developments as the repercussions of Jasmine's stand against discrimination continued to reverberate throughout the corporate world. What had started as a viral moment was evolving into a movement, with the power to transform long-established systems of exclusion. The third day after the viral incident began with breaking news. A class-action lawsuit had been filed against Atlantic International Airlines by former passengers alleging racial discrimination in service. The lead attorneys had compiled testimonies from over 200 individuals who reported experiences similar to Jasmine's, being ignored, receiving inferior service, or facing outright hostility while traveling in premium cabins. Jasmine had not initiated the lawsuit, but her viral moment had created space for these previously isolated incidents to be recognized as part of a pattern. The attorneys reached out, asking if she would consider joining the action. She agreed to provide her testimony but declined any financial interest in the outcome, instead requesting that any settlement include mandatory structural changes to the airline's training and accountability systems. Meanwhile, at Atlantic International headquarters, the crisis had reached catastrophic proportions. Former employees began coming forward with evidence of systematic discrimination, not just against passengers, but within the company's hiring and promotion practices. Particularly damaging was testimony from a former HR director who revealed that complaints against flight attendants like Veronica Caldwell had been consistently buried to avoid unnecessary complications. By mid-morning, the airline's board of directors called an emergency session. The stock price had fallen 22% over 3 days, major corporate clients were canceling contracts, and the public relations disaster showed no signs of abating. After a 4-hour closed-door meeting, a terse announcement was released. CEO Alexander Montgomery would be stepping down to pursue other opportunities. The corporate euphemism fooled no one. Across the Atlantic, Jasmine received a surprising invitation to testify before a congressional committee examining discrimination in luxury market access. What had begun as a personal incident had sparked a broader conversation about systemic barriers faced by minority entrepreneurs across industries. "This isn't what I expected when I boarded that flight to Paris," Jasmine confided to Marcus as they prepared for another day of meetings with potential Heritage Collective partners. I came here to sell champagne, not start a movement. Sometimes the moment chooses you, Marcus replied. And you were ready for it. The day brought more developments. French regulatory authorities announced they were opening an investigation into Luxury Universal's business practices, citing potential discrimination in vendor selection. The probe was unprecedented in an industry that had operated on handshake deals and unwritten rules for generations. Philippe Laurent issued a statement announcing a comprehensive review of Luxury Universal's partnership criteria, promising greater transparency and equity in their selection process. The move was widely recognized as too little, too late, damage control, rather than genuine commitment to change. As Heritage Collective continued to gain momentum, Jasmine received record-breaking sales reports from her team in New York. Royal Heritage had sold more in the past week than in the previous 6 months combined. Retailers reported customers specifically requesting the champagne from the video, often buying cases rather than single bottles in a show of support. The social media conversation had evolved as well. What began as outrage over one incident of discrimination had transformed into a broader movement supporting Black-owned businesses across sectors. The hashtag #DAR Support Black Luxury was trending globally, with consumers sharing their discoveries of premium products from Black entrepreneurs. Jasmine's inbox filled with messages from Black business students and entrepreneurs thanking her for standing her ground and creating visibility for the barriers they all faced. "You showed us we don't have to accept being treated as second class," wrote one young woman launching a skincare line. "We can demand the respect our products deserve." That afternoon, Jasmine received a surprising message request on her social media from Veronica Caldwell, the flight attendant whose actions had initiated the entire situation. After consideration, Jasmine accepted the request, curious about what Veronica might say. The message was unexpected. A tearful video apology that seemed genuinely remorseful rather than performative. Veronica acknowledged her actions, made no excuses, and expressed her intention to use the experience as a catalyst for personal growth. She had enrolled in implicit bias training and was volunteering with an organization promoting diversity in the aviation industry. Jasmine's response was measured but gracious. True change requires acknowledging harm and committing to do better. I appreciate your willingness to grow from this experience and hope you'll continue this journey. Her response reflected her broader approach to the situation, focusing on systemic change rather than individual blame. This perspective resonated with many observers who had grown weary of cancel culture, but hungered for meaningful accountability and transformation. Later that evening, Jasmine received another unexpected message, this one from Alexander Montgomery, the recently ousted CEO of Atlantic International. His tone was dramatically different from their previous interactions. "Ms. Wilson, I've had time to reflect on recent events. I believe we should meet in person. No lawyers, no PR teams, just a conversation between two business leaders." Jasmine consulted with her team before agreeing to the meeting, with specific conditions. It would take place in a public location, and Montgomery would need to come prepared for complete transparency about the airline's history of handling discrimination complaints. The following morning, they met at a quiet cafe near the Tuileries Garden. Montgomery appeared significantly different from his polished television appearances, tired, humbled, and noticeably less confident. "Thank you for meeting with me," he began awkwardly. "I wanted to speak with you directly, without the corporate filters." "I appreciate that," Jasmine replied. "What did you want to discuss?" For the next hour, Montgomery revealed the behind-the-scenes reality of corporate America's approach to diversity issues. He described the cynical calculations of risk management, how companies weighed the cost of settlements against the expense of systemic change, how diversity initiatives were often for show rather than substance, and how executives privately dismissed discrimination concerns while publicly claiming to value inclusion. "The truth is, people like me have been managing these issues rather than solving them," Montgomery admitted. It was always about containing damage, never about creating equity. What Montgomery didn't know was that Jasmine was recording their conversation with a discreet device, legally, as France is a one-party consent jurisdiction for recordings. His candid admissions about corporate America's approach to discrimination would become powerful evidence in the ongoing push for industry-wide change. As their conversation concluded, Montgomery made a final observation. "You know, if you'd just accepted our settlement offer, none of this would have happened. The system was designed to buy silence and maintain the status quo." Jasmine smiled slightly. "That's precisely why I couldn't accept it. Some things are more important than money." As she left the meeting, Jasmine felt a sense of closure. The confrontation with Montgomery had confirmed what she'd always suspected about how power operated in these spaces, but it had also revealed the fragility of systems built on exclusion rather than excellence. That afternoon, she shared the recording with her legal team, who confirmed it could be used in the class action lawsuit and congressional testimony. The evidence directly from a former CEO would be devastating to corporate defenses that portrayed discrimination as isolated incidents rather than systemic problems. By evening, Heritage Collective had finalized partnerships with 37 independent retailers across Europe, creating an alternative distribution channel that would bypass traditional gatekeepers entirely. The collective's direct-to-consumer platform would launch the following week, allowing global customers to purchase their products without intermediaries. As Jasmine prepared to return to New York, she reflected on the extraordinary transformation of the past week. What began as a business trip to secure traditional distribution had evolved into a movement challenging the very foundations of how luxury products reached consumers. Her phone buzzed with a message from her grandmother. "Your grandfather would be so proud. He always said the best revenge is changing the game entirely." Jasmine smiled at the message, remembering the stories of her grandfather, a brilliant musician who had been denied opportunities because of his race, but had built his own pathways to success. The legacy of resilience and innovation ran deep in her family. As she packed her bags, Jasmine included something special, an empty bottle of the Royal Heritage champagne she had opened on that fateful flight. It would stand in her office as a reminder that sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't just perseverance, but transformation. By refusing to accept the limitations others attempted to impose, she had created something more significant than she had initially sought, not just distribution for her product, but a revolution in how an entire industry operated. Her flight home would be on a different airline. 6 months later, Jasmine stood in the soaring atrium of Royal Heritage's new Paris headquarters, a beautifully renovated 19th century building in the heart of the city. Sunlight streamed through the glass ceiling, illuminating the space where hundreds of industry professionals, media representatives, and supporters had gathered for the official European launch of what was now the fastest-growing champagne brand in the global market. The journey from that moment on the airplane to this triumphant day had been extraordinary by any measure. Royal Heritage had experienced a 1,200% sales increase in half a year. Heritage Collective now included 73 independent beverage companies from 28 countries, creating the first truly global alternative to traditional distribution networks. As Jasmine surveyed the crowd, she spotted familiar faces that represented each chapter of this remarkable story. Clara Dupont, now Heritage Collective's European Operations Director, was chatting with Marcus Whitfield, whose own brand had flourished within the new ecosystem. Jean Toussaint had left Luxury Universal to become Heritage's Master of Wine, bringing decades of expertise to the collective. Several members of Congress who had supported the legislation sparked by Jasmine's testimony were present, alongside European regulators who had overseen the industry reforms. Most precious to Jasmine was the elegant 82-year-old woman being escorted to a seat of honor, her grandmother Eloise, making her first-ever trip to Paris to witness her granddaughter's triumph. The formal program began with Jasmine approaching the podium. The room quieted immediately. 6 months ago, I boarded a flight to Paris with the simple goal of securing traditional distribution for Royal Heritage. What happened instead changed not just my company, but an entire industry's approach to inclusion and excellence. She paused, looking around the room. That moment on the airplane revealed something important. Systems of exclusion don't just harm individuals. They deprive industries of innovation, consumers of choice, and society of progress. By challenging those systems, we've created something more powerful than I could have imagined. Jasmine detailed the remarkable developments of the past 6 months. Royal Heritage had launched its own distribution network, supporting not just their products but those of other minority-owned brands previously excluded from traditional channels. Their direct-to-consumer platform had revolutionized how premium beverages reached global customers, with blockchain technology ensuring authentication and transparent sourcing. Atlantic International Airlines, under entirely new leadership, had implemented the industry's most comprehensive anti-discrimination training and accountability systems. The class action lawsuit had resulted in not just financial compensation for victims, but fundamental policy changes across the aviation industry. Most significantly, Jasmine had established the Royal Heritage Investment Fund, using a portion of the company's unprecedented profits to support Black entrepreneurs facing similar barriers to entry in luxury markets. The fund had already provided capital to 27 startups that traditional investors had overlooked. The video that captured that moment of discrimination is now used in business schools worldwide as a case study in crisis management, ethical leadership, and industry transformation, Jasmine noted. But more importantly, it's a reminder that sometimes the greatest opportunities arise from the most challenging moments. She gestured toward a special display at the center of the atrium, the original bottle of Royal Heritage champagne she had opened on that flight, now preserved in a custom case with a simple inscription, "Pour your own." Following the formal presentation, the celebration continued with the official unveiling of Royal Heritage's European collection, premium champagnes created in partnership with small French vineyards that had previously struggled for recognition against industry giants. As guests mingled and enjoyed the champagne, Jasmine escorted her grandmother through the crowd, introducing her to business leaders and dignitaries. "Your granddaughter has transformed our understanding of luxury and inclusion," the French Minister of Commerce told Eloise. "She has created a model that values excellence and accessibility simultaneously." Eloise smiled proudly. "She was always stubborn about doing things her own way, even as a child. I'm just happy the world finally caught up to her vision." As the afternoon progressed, Jasmine was approached by a familiar face. Flight attendant Clara Jackson from Atlantic International, part of the airline's new leadership team focused on service equity. "Ms. Wilson, I wanted to personally thank you," Clara said. "The changes you inspired at our company have created opportunities for advancement that never existed before. We're finally being evaluated on the quality of our service, rather than fitting a certain image." "That's exactly what this was always about," Jasmine replied. "Excellence shouldn't have a color or gender attached to it." Later, as the formal event transitioned to evening celebrations, a special moment occurred that few could have anticipated. 6 months earlier, Jasmine boarded a short demonstration flight aboard Atlantic International's newest luxury aircraft. The same airline that had once denied her service was now featuring Royal Heritage champagne as their exclusive first-class offering. As Clara Jackson respectfully served Jasmine the first glass, the symmetry of the moment wasn't lost on anyone present. What had begun as discrimination had catalyzed transformation not just for one company, but for an entire industry's approach to service, quality, and inclusion. "Sometimes the most powerful response to discrimination isn't anger but excellence," Jasmine observed to the assembled journalists documenting the moment. "By refusing to accept limitations, we create new possibilities not just for ourselves, but for everyone who comes after us." The following morning, Jasmine noticed a young Black woman waiting nervously in the lobby of Royal Heritage's headquarters. Introducing herself as Aisha Thompson, the woman explained she had launched a small batch premium tea company, but was struggling to gain distribution despite excellent reviews. "Everyone says the quality is exceptional, but somehow there's always a reason why I don't fit their portfolio," Aisha explained. Jasmine immediately recognized the familiar pattern. "Let me guess. They use phrases like, 'not quite right for our customer base,' or 'doesn't align with our brand identity.'" Aisha's eyes widened. "Exactly those words. How did you know?" "Because discrimination rarely announces itself directly," Jasmine replied. "It hides behind vague professional language while maintaining the same exclusionary outcomes." Over coffee, Jasmine shared the lessons she'd learned through her journey. The importance of creating alternate pathways when traditional ones are blocked, the power of alliance over isolation, and the way excellence ultimately speaks for itself when given proper exposure. The system wasn't built for people like us, Jasmine acknowledged, but that doesn't mean we can't build something better. By the end of their conversation, Aisha had an appointment with Heritage Collective's product development team and an invitation to the next showcase event. The cycle of mentorship and opportunity that had been denied to Jasmine was now something she could provide to others facing similar barriers. Later that afternoon, Jasmine met with Luxury Universal's new leadership team. The company had undergone a complete reorganization after the discrimination scandal. Their new CEO, a former critic of the industry's exclusionary practices, had reached out repeatedly to rebuild the relationship. "We've completely restructured our evaluation criteria for new partnerships," the CEO explained, showing Jasmine their new objective quality assessment matrix. Brand origin and founder demographics no longer factor into decisions, only product excellence and market potential. "That's progress," Jasmine acknowledged, "but the real test will be your portfolio composition a year from now. Intention must translate to results." As the Paris visit concluded, Jasmine hosted a final dinner at her hotel for the original allies who had supported her during those critical days 6 months earlier. Clara Dupont, Jean Toussaint, Sophie Lefebvre, and Marcus Whitfield raised their glasses in a toast. "To Royal Heritage," Marcus began. "No," Jasmine corrected gently. "To heritage itself, to honoring where we come from while transforming where we're going, to creating spaces where excellence is the only criterion that matters." The following morning, as Jasmine and her grandmother prepared to return to New York, a special delivery arrived. A limited edition bottle of Royal Heritage's newest creation, Justice. The champagne, featuring notes of perseverance, dignity, and triumph, had already sold out its initial production run through pre-orders alone. "This one's for your personal collection," the delivery note read, signed by her entire production team. Jasmine carefully packed it alongside the original bottle she had opened on that fateful flight. Bookends to an extraordinary journey of transformation. On the flight home, first class on a different airline, Jasmine reflected on how a single moment of discrimination had catalyzed a movement for change that extended far beyond her company or industry. By refusing to accept less than she deserved and creating alternative pathways to success, she had opened doors for countless others facing similar barriers. "What are you thinking about?" her grandmother asked, noticing Jasmine's contemplative expression. "How sometimes the worst moments contain the seeds of the greatest transformation," Jasmine replied, "and how building your own table really is better than begging for a seat at someone else's." Eloise squeezed her granddaughter's hand. "That's the lesson I always hoped you'd learn, not just how to succeed despite the barriers, but how to remove them for those coming after you." As the plane soared over the Atlantic, Jasmine thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From that Harlem apartment where she'd first dreamed of creating something meaningful to becoming a catalyst for industry-wide transformation. The path hadn't been what she expected, but the destination was far more significant than she had initially imagined. 6 months later, as she stood on the podium accepting the Industry Innovator of the Year award, Jasmine shared the philosophy that had guided her journey. True luxury isn't defined by exclusivity or tradition. It's defined by excellence, innovation, and the courage to create new standards rather than conforming to old ones. When we refuse to accept discrimination as the cost of entry, we don't just change our own circumstances, we transform entire industries for the better. The standing ovation that followed wasn't just for Jasmine Wilson or Royal Heritage, but for a new vision of what was possible when barriers to entry fell and excellence became the only criterion that mattered. What do you think about Jasmine's journey from discrimination to transformation? Has her story inspired you to stand your ground when facing unfair treatment? Comment below with a time you refused to accept less than you deserved. Don't forget to like this video if you believe in building new tables rather than begging for seats at old ones. Subscribe to hear more stories of remarkable individuals who changed broken systems, and share this with someone who needs to be reminded of their power to transform discrimination into opportunity. Thank you for joining us for this incredible story of champagne, justice, and the courage to pour your own way forward. Jasmine's journey teaches us that sometimes our greatest triumphs emerge from our most painful experiences. When faced with discrimination, she chose dignity over defeat, transformation over resentment. Her story reminds us that success isn't just about personal achievement, but about changing systems that perpetuate inequality. The true power lies not in gaining acceptance from exclusionary institutions, but in creating alternative pathways that value excellence over tradition. By refusing to be silenced or bought off, Jasmine turned a moment of humiliation into a movement for industry-wide change. Her approach demonstrates that responding to discrimination with excellence and innovation is more powerful than anger alone. She recognized that building her own table was better than fighting for a seat at one that wasn't designed to include her. Perhaps the most important lesson is that breaking barriers isn't just about individual success. Jasmine's commitment to creating opportunities for others shows that true leadership means ensuring you aren't the last or only one to succeed. When we transform discrimination into opportunity, we don't just change our own circumstances, we create new possibilities for everyone who follows. What moment of discrimination have you transformed into opportunity? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If Jasmine's refusal to accept second-class treatment inspired you, hit that like button to help more people discover this powerful story. Subscribe for more narratives about remarkable individuals who turn barriers into breakthroughs. And share this video with someone facing their own champagne moment. That critical choice between accepting limitations or creating new possibilities. Thank you for joining us on this journey from discrimination to transformation. Remember, sometimes the most powerful response to being denied service is pouring your own and changing the entire industry in the process.